On Tech News Today, we'll tell you how 3 new Facebook features radically change the mobile landscape. Also, find out why Facebook's acquisition of Oculus VR might be in jeopardy. And AT&T wants to compete against a combined Comcast-Time Warner cable. And they want to do it by buying DirecTV. All that is coming up right now on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Thursday, May 1st, 2014. Where did April go? This episode is brought to you by RingCentral, the cloud-based phone system we use here at Twit. And it just got better with the launch of Meetings, the full-service video conference feature. 0 startup costs, and RingCentral starts at under $25 a month per user. Try it now with a 30-day risk-free trial. Buy 1 desk phone, get a second phone free, up to 20 phones. Call 800-543-9980 or visit ringcentral.com and use our promo code TWIT. And by ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster, easier, and cheaper. Post your job to 50-plus job boards with 1 click. Try ZipRecruiter for a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Tech News Today explores the big stories of the day with some of the world's best journalists. Our guest co-anchor today is Brian Fung, a technology reporter for The Washington Post. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks.
Glad to have you on again. You've guest co-anchored once before, did a great job. We're glad to have you back. Well, today we're experimenting with something called the Pixel Core question engine. That's not really the name of it. I guess that's a code name. But Pixel Core, as you know, if you watch MacBreak Weekly or Twit, is Alex Lindsay's company. And he developed this, and in fact, this question engine, it's a question and answer session for real-time video media like this one. Is a system where you can ask a question and then other people can vote up or down those questions. And then I see the questions right here in order of how they were. This is what I see right here. It's very friendly. There's also a, of course you can look at this on a laptop or browser or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you ask questions, I see them in real time, and as they're voted up to the top, I see them. When I answer them, I can say, okay, I've answered this. And then the whole question and answer system, along with the video recording of the show, is preserved for posterity, for all time, for future archaeologists to look at and wonder what happened with our civilization. Well, Brian, why don't we just get right into the news? We've got a lot of news to cover, starting with, of course, Facebook. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and a smattering of other Facebook execs unveiled new products, new services, new features, and new standards for developers yesterday at the company's first F8 conference in 3 years. And we've got a panel of experts to tell us about this, starting with Lance Ulanoff, who's editor-at-large of Mashable. Welcome, Lance.
Thanks for having me back.
And we also have Reed Albergotti, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal who specializes in Facebook and other things. Welcome, Reed.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And finally, we have Lauren Hawkinson, who's a reporter for GigaOM. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Great. Lauren, have you been on Tech News Today before?
I have not. I've been on Tech News Tonight, though.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to Tech News Today. We're just like Tech News Tonight, but we're earlier.
Yeah, we're more today than tonight.
That's right. That's right. We're more about what's happening today rather than what's happening tonight. All right. Well, Facebook announced a long list of new things, a very long list, much longer than we can deal with here today. But I want to zero in on 3 offerings that I think will have the biggest impact on you and me. And the first of these is Facebook Anonymous Login. Now, Lance Ulanoff, can you sort of just describe generally what Anonymous Login is and kind of how it works?
Well, I guess the idea is that these third-party apps that Facebook works with and that all those developers are building at F8 will now give you the option of something that you can't do on Facebook proper is be an anonymous user, so you don't have to have your real identity. Big shift from what Mark Zuckerberg believed, that sort of anonymity was just going away, privacy was a thing of the past. So now you can sort of, as long as you want, it seems, use them privately, create some sort of fake name, and then if you want, you can actually upgrade to a full name, your real name on the app. And so it just, I think it's, to me, it feels like with these apps, a little bit of a try before you really buy into the whole idea of connecting the app to your Facebook experience. But it's clearly a sign that going forward, you're going to have a lot more options for how you present yourself on the Facebook platform.
Now, you brought up an interesting issue, which I think is one of the more interesting because it's kind of unknown, at least to me at this point, which is that there was a lot of emphasis on, this try before you buy thing, and you don't have to give your information to another app for now, implying that you eventually would want to hand over your personal information to the app if you decided to continue using it. Is this just a little bit of sugar to help the we're keeping all the data go down on the part of Facebook, or is there some mechanism within this that encourages the user to eventually share personal information with the app?
I would expect that they are going to have some sort of carrot that encourages you to give more. There's probably two experiences here, the anonymous experience and the full-on experience with Facebook integration, which theoretically you get a lot more out of. And of course, Facebook gets a lot more from, because the more they know about you, the more it serves their ad partners and the whole system.
I see. Well, Reed Albergotti, because Facebook knows who you are, this isn't really anonymity technically, is it?
No, I mean, I wouldn't call it anonymity. Facebook still gets to track you, gets to see what apps you're using, how you're surfing the web. It gives a lot back to Facebook, and it takes a little bit away from these ad partners who, one of the benefits of putting one of these Facebook logins on your website or your app is that you get to collect all this information from users. And now, presumably, users will be sharing less information about themselves with these third parties. They'll still be giving a lot to Facebook. Now, Facebook's argument here is that it's still a huge benefit for app developers and website developers because it makes it so easy to log into these apps. And a lot of people, they download apps and then they get to the login part and they just decide not to do it or delete the app. And Facebook's saying this will push people to take that next step.
Now, Reed Albergotti, this seems to me to be a stroke of inspired genius, because it satisfies a number of challenges that Facebook has. One of them is the trust issue. I mean, they know that users don't like the idea of giving out their personal information to every app that comes waltzing down the path. And of course, so many apps, including flashlight apps, famously harvest user data for no apparent reason and share it with nobody knows whom and so on. So there's a lot of anxiety around sharing personal information with apps, and so they satisfy a user demand, and Facebook gets to be the good guy here and say, oh, we're going to help you not have to share your data with these apps that you may not use eventually. And on the other hand, they kind of they create a more dependence on Facebook for that data, because Facebook is kind of creating scarcity. Let's say, for example, as a thought experiment, that this is wildly successful and everybody uses it and all the app vendors use it, well, there's going to be a lot less user data out there floating around for sale, being harvested by different apps, and Facebook will have it all. It's really a brilliant plan, isn't it?
I think it is very smart. I think this will get more people to use these Facebook logins, which is hugely valuable for Facebook. Keeps them sort of this ubiquitous presence on the ever expanding internet and mobile internet. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Facebook's data, the one reason they don't sell their data to third parties like, a lot of the data brokers we hear about is that it is so valuable. Facebook has real identity, and it uses that identity, that personal information, to sell very targeted advertisements based on your demographics, based on what you like and share on Facebook. And this is a step in the direction of sort of hoarding that data even more, keeping it for themselves, and then using it to power advertisements. Now, they also announced, this mobile ad network at F8 yesterday, and that's another way they can use that data. It's very valuable.
So one of the questions that I actually have here is, have we heard anything from app developers about this plan, and do they feel threatened and about the prospect of losing access to this data, or do they tend to see it as potentially a good thing, encouraging users to sign up for their services more?
It's actually funny because when they announced this at F8 yesterday at the keynote address, there were hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the audience, most of them developers, and there was some applause, but certainly not a standing ovation. So I think it's unclear at this point. I think it's kind of settling in for developers, but check in, back with us in the next couple of weeks, as I think we'll have some follow-up stories on how this is being adopted and what developers, think about it.
I personally, I think that they did this for the people outside, for Facebook's 1 billion plus users, and the people who are getting these apps who, as they said, are afraid of that blue button, who don't want to use it because they assume that it opens them up, it opens up their information. So I don't know how much it helps developers at all, except maybe they'll be more comfortable sort of showing off that blue button, that this partnership, especially on the mobile devices that the mobile apps are about to build, will be an interesting badge as opposed to one that kind of freaks the users out.
Now, Lance, your video looks amazing. I have to say, that's the most amazing Skype video I've ever seen. I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it.
I'm not moving.
Looks like that's
right.
That's a great idea. Now, Lauren Hawkinson, we have a question from the Pixel Core question engine that I mentioned at the top of the show. And Jason, do you have the URL for that you can put on the screen?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just so anybody else wants to chime in. But the question that's coming from this chat application is this. The question is the model of paying for an app and not giving up personal information dead? Does this kill that model, Lauren Hawkinson?
I think that's actually a really good question. I think that what you have to realize is, this is on Facebook. And so, Facebook largely deals in free apps, always has, always will. And so a lot of companies that actually use Facebook integration, like Spotify, they operate on a freemium model in order to, get that information out there and to get people connected. It's free. In exchange, you do log in with Facebook, and you would pay Spotify premium still and still have to log in with Facebook if you so choose. The difference here is that, it's going to be a lot easier for users to access apps and to test drive them and to see if they're for them without actually giving forth that information. I know personally, I never use Facebook login. I'm very weird like that. I don't like it. I don't like Facebook seeing anything that I do, even if it's, listening to TLC on Spotify. I can't do it. So what ends up happening is I log in through my email. If I'm able to log in anonymously through Facebook and access Spotify, it's the same thing. It's just a different go around. I think you're always going to see paid apps that are going to protect privacy. I think you're always going to see free apps that use Facebook login to get their data. I don't think that any model is going to be going out of fashion after anonymous login rolls out.
Okay, so let's talk about app links, which is another major feature rolled out yesterday. Reed Albergotti, can you tell us what app links is and kind of how it works and what that's all about?
What Facebook said is they want to take what we had with the internet, the old desktop internet with URLs, and apply that to the world of mobile apps, essentially allowing app developers to tag not just their apps, but specific locations within the app, specific features with URLs, essentially app URLs that users can then share. So, I might email you a link, let's say from Spotify to a specific song. You get that link you can get it on your desktop computer, and it might take you to the Spotify website. But if you clicked on that link on your iPhone, it would take you directly to that song, and the song would begin actually playing the song that I linked to. So there's a big stumbling block to this, though. On the web, developers would, these URLs would sort of happen automatically. But on the mobile internet, it takes an extra step. App developers actually have to create these links. So Facebook is hoping that with their huge, billion-plus user base, that app developers will see this as a standard that could actually stick around just because of the sheer size of Facebook. So can Facebook create these standardized URLs for apps? That's a big question.
Certainly, it's certainly something that users would desire, but you wonder if it's really more like the mobile OS's job, that when we go to Apple's WWDC in June, what if they introduce a new code or some new tag system for developers that allows them to do it across all of their apps and makes app links obsolete before it really gets off the ground. I mean, I think it's a great idea because it's what you want, but I'm not sure that Facebook is necessarily the one that should be doing it.
Well, I mean, with the World Wide Web, it was this standardized system, and that was what made it so great and so usable for everyone. And I think you're right. There are so many competing interests here. You have, Google with Android, you have Apple with iOS, and they all want their proprietary software and devices to be used by their users and sort of keep it within their ecosystem. So there's huge competition here, and there are even other companies that have tried to create these universal URLs, and they haven't really taken off yet. So yeah, I think this is a big challenge. And I mean, even Mark Zuckerberg admitted that it's going to be at least a few years if this takes off, if at all.
So if you just tuned in, we're talking about Facebook's big F8 announcement at their developer conference yesterday. We're with Lance Ulanoff, editor-at-large of Mashable, Reed Albergotti, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and Lauren Hawkinson, a reporter for GigaOM. Now, Lauren Hawkinson, the other feature that I wanted to talk about here today is Facebook Audience Network, which is Facebook's mobile ad network. Can you describe what this is for us?
Yeah, so Facebook's ad network is a way for developers to actually gain access to Facebook's specific ad targeting systems and also their ad units to embed or to make as an interstitial in their own apps. If you think about, say, Facebook's newsfeed, the ads that are available on Facebook's newsfeed, specifically the native ads, is something that they're pushing very particularly. Facebook would essentially provide the targeting and the platform with which developers would be able to place those ads within their apps and make them look seamless. As well as the interstitial ads, which are the little ads that come in for some games, like the one that they presented at F8 was Cut the Rope.
Now, one impressive scenario that I picked up on during this announcement is that if a customer, this happens all the time, customers go in to buy something at some online store, they load their shopping cart, and then they wander away for one reason or another. This system enables retailers to not only target that user knowing that they didn't complete their shopping cart, but actually provide a link in the ad to go back to the shopping cart and say, hey, don't you have some unfinished business here? We want your money. That's pretty killer feature, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually part of what Facebook is integrating into its experience now, is doing a lot more e-commerce direct activity. They allow you to go back to your cart on the Facebook feed. So just imagine those ads, coming, from other mobile experiences. Essentially, your information is going to carry across many different apps, and you're going to be seeing stuff that is catered to you and actually catered to your activity.
Interesting.
Pretty ingenious. Interesting.
Now, Lance Ulanoff, one final question on this topic, and that is, do you think Facebook is going to succeed with this? I mean, if you can win in mobile advertising, you've won the big thing everybody's been trying to grab. I mean, Google's been pretty successful with mobile advertising, but it's really been a tough nut to crack for almost all of these companies. Do you think Facebook has a killer feature here?
Yeah, well, I think that the conversation you just had about that this is really more than just pure play ads. This is a sort of a commerce environment where all the heavy lifting is really done on the Facebook side, and really the developers have to just sort of build in these links and let it happen almost. I think that's super smart. One of the things I kept thinking about is, I'm not sure the percentage of developers who are currently sort of developing for the pure play desktop Facebook platform as opposed to the mobile platform. I know a lot of them really want to be making these pure mobile apps that tie into Facebook, but they need to sort of have the wherewithal and see a revenue stream, and having this part sort of ready to go. I think it's really, really smart, and it's a good approach for mobile advertising as opposed to saying, we'll just manage the ads purely and that's it.
Well, Lance Ulanoff, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today and sharing your expertise on this topic with us.
It was my pleasure.
And also for sharing that incredible video. It's just breathtaking.
Thank you.
Thanks again. And I also want to thank Lauren Hawkinson for coming on as well from GigaOM.
Thank you so much.
And Lauren can be reached at gigaom.com, and also L. Hawkinson on Twitter. And I forgot to mention that Lance can be reached at Lance Ulanoff on Twitter as well. And, of course, Reed Albergotti is going to stick around to talk about our next story, because it's the story that he wrote with one other Wall Street Journal. They have a really interesting exclusive. But first, I want to tell you about Ring Central. Ring Central is a cloud-based phone system, and in fact, it's the one that we use here at TWiT. And the reason we use it is because it's a very high-quality service that exists in the cloud. Until very recently, your only option for a small business or a medium business or any size business that has a phone system, of course you need a phone system, is to have a big, bloated, ugly, hard-to-manage, expensive PBX system that is a big, hardware, software ordeal. Ring Central does everything in the cloud, and when I see everything, I mean everything. We can send and receive fax messages from our smartphones. We can get voicemail via email. I love that feature. The auto receptionist feature greets our callers and announces employees and department extensions. But now, Ring Central has a new feature called Meetings. Meetings enables us to host face-to-face meetings in high def, share desktop and documents with anyone, anytime, anywhere, on any device. And in fact, Meetings makes Ring Central the single best business solution on the market today. Ring Central offers all-inclusive pricing under $25 a month per user. You can start right now with a 30-day risk-free trial. And they have a special offer for our listeners. When you buy one desk phone, you get a second phone free, up to 20 phones. So call this number designated for listeners and viewers of Tech News Today. That's 800-543-9980. It's 800-543-9980. Or you can just go to ringcentral.com and make sure you use the promo code TWiT. Well, as we've reported on previous episodes of Tech News Today, Facebook is buying the virtual reality startup Oculus VR, which makes the Oculus Rift virtual reality headset. But now, a video game company called ZeniMax says they own the intellectual property behind the Oculus Rift. And this exclusive was written by Reed Albergotti and his co-author. Reed, what is ZeniMax claiming here exactly?
Well, ZeniMax is saying that John Carmack, one of the co-founders of Oculus, a former employee of ZeniMax who left to work for Oculus last year, actually is using intellectual property owned by ZeniMax, and that's a key component of the Oculus Rift. So they're actually asking for compensation for their intellectual property. So it's an interesting wrinkle in this acquisition deal.
Do we know how much they're asking for?
No, and I don't think there's a specific number at this point. There was some back and forth as far back as 2012, in which ZeniMax was, negotiating with Oculus for, a potential ownership stake in the company. There have been talks about this. Some other employees, there were 5 other employees who left ZeniMax for Oculus, and that's been a point of dispute. So it's unclear exactly how this will shake out, but it is clear that ZeniMax wants to be compensated.
Reed, can you tell us a little bit more about ZeniMax as a company? And it's pretty big in the gaming world. But for those people who don't necessarily follow, game news, what do we know about ZeniMax? And who are they?
Well, ZeniMax makes all these big blockbuster games like Doom and Wolfenstein, and those are games that John Carmack is known for sort of leading programming on. He's a well-known, if you don't know his name, just a very well-known guy in the video game industry. So this is, and when I should say when Carmack left ZeniMax, that was a big deal when he went to Oculus, and I think it actually signaled to the video game industry that virtual reality is really something right around the corner. And the interesting part of this is ZeniMax is probably going to be one of the companies developing games for these Oculus goggles. So it's right now you might even call them frenemies with Oculus. And again, this is not there's no lawsuit that's been filed yet, so we can't call this a big legal battle. But it's going to be, we're going to watch it closely and see how it unfolds.
Now, Reed, you're talking about John Carmack, who, of course, I believe is the creator of Doom and Wolfenstein 3D, as you mentioned. And the video, if you were watching the video feed of this show, what we were showing was, in fact, part of the evidence behind this, which is John Carmack himself demonstrating a virtual reality headset that looks very Oculus VR-like. It's very early days. It's got duct tape on it holding it together. But this is when he worked for ZeniMax. And, he was a little bit of a celebrity for that demo. He got a lot of attention back then for these demonstrations. Then he went over, and so it's going to be interesting. I imagine that the amount of money that they want is pretty much could be categorized as much as possible, because come on, it's Facebook. This is a company that spends $19 billion on various companies that will go unmentioned. Well, Reed Albergotti, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today to talk about two stories, and really appreciate your coverage here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and I hope to have a faster internet connection like Lance.
Oh, man.
Time.
And Lauren.
We can all aspire for such greatness.
Both Lance and Lauren. I mean, come on. You're with the Wall Street Journal. Step it up, man.
I'll have a discussion with the IT person, but thanks so much. I hope you could at least hear me.
Yeah, you sound great, Reed. Well, thanks a lot. No, your video looks fine. And you can find Reed Albergotti at the Wall Street Journal's website, WSJ.com, and also on Twitter at ReedAlbergotti.com. Albergotti ends with 2 T's and an I. So you can find that on Twitter. Well, AT&T wants to buy DirecTV, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. The combined company resulting from such a merger will be close in size to Comcast after it acquires Time Warner Cable. So we're facing, Brian Fung, the prospect of two colossal giants dominating the sort of online and cable TV system. What do you think of this potential news? I mean, what if AT&T really did buy DirecTV? How would that change the market?
Well, as you kind of allude, AT&T and a DirecTV merger would create kind of a really interesting dilemma for regulators as to whether they should allow the Comcast Time Warner Cable merger to go through, with the anticipation that a possible AT&T DirecTV merger may follow soon after. I think the possibility of a merger between AT&T and DirecTV, as you kind of alluded, to sets up a potential head-to-head competition between AT&T and Comcast in a big way, and AT&T has about 5.5 million TV subscribers. Well, DirecTV has far more, which would give AT&T a big leg up in the pay TV business. And I think it would be really interesting to see a company like Ma Bell, which has historically been a phone company, go up against one of the biggest players in cable.
Just to get the numbers out on the table, DirecTV has about 20 million subscribers. AT&T has, as you said, about 5.6, 5.7 million subscribers thereabouts. So that you're looking at 25.5 million, and then Comcast plus Time Warner Cable would be about 30. So that's what we're looking at, 25.5 million versus 30 million subscribers. Pretty close. Obviously, both giants. And of course, this acquisition would not be cheap. It would probably be worth about $40 billion. That's a lot of money, even for a company like AT&T. Well, at this point, there are talks. There are sources that indicate that this is something that AT&T is very interested in. We don't know if it's going to happen. And if it does happen, we don't know if regulators will approve it. But this is a really this is a possibility that could change everything in the market. So we'll be keeping our eye on that. And we're also going to be looking at something else. Snapchat started rolling out this morning a new version of its mobile app. Their goal is to move beyond messaging. And Brian Fung, this is really interesting. It seems like all these different social and messaging applications, everything from Facebook to Snapchat to all the others, WhatsApp, you name it, they all started out with these very narrow little niches. For example, Snapchat was the first to mainstream or highly popularize the idea of self-destructing messages. You could send a picture or a message to somebody, and in a few seconds it would go away forever, and you could pretty much get away with whatever it is you sent with no evidence to work against you. Now they're adding all these other features, and there's some nice features in here that are somewhat unique, but for the most part, so many of these apps are adding the features that other companies are having. And it looks like we're headed for a market where pretty much every little social app does every little social thing. But what did you think of the Snapchat announcement this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really have to look at this in its kind of historical context. As you pointed out, we're seeing a lot of these individual niche apps start to take on more and more features. But, if you look at the history of social media, first you had Friendster and MySpace. Those were really the first generation of social media, social networks that we had. And then you had sort of more generalized, social networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, and those really took off and became very widespread. it sort of introduced people, I think, more to the idea of social media being a social environment. And then we sort of had kind of a return to a single serve model where you had one app that did one thing, and it seems like now these apps are realizing that maybe that the model that they've been working on for so long has to change.
That's right. And just to go into some of the specifics about what's unique about Snapchat's offering. Now, like so many apps, it offers video chat. So now you can sit there and be texting somebody and say, hey, let's take this into a video thing. You just push a button, and now you're having a face-to-face video call. Apparently, by pressing your thumb on the screen, you'll show the front-facing camera as well. So you see your own face, so you can see what you look like. And then you can see the other person through the other person's camera all in real time. There's some other little nice interface conventions like that are cool. But the idea here is to move seamlessly between chat, between texting or instant messaging, which they make a distinction with, and video chat. Now, the distinction is that you can have a regular IM session where there's a little history. You see the history. It doesn't vanish immediately as soon as a few seconds after you get it. However, when the whole conversation is done, the default mode is that it vanishes, the video vanishes. So they still are retaining some of their sort of core competency, which is making stuff go away. And it looks like a really appealing app. I mean, I think the interface looks very pleasant. The addition of video chat and so on looks very welcome. And I really like that idea. Google tried to do this with Google Plus to a certain extent, where they tried to make it very seamless to go from an online message, the commenting system. So you're in there exchanging comments, and you decide you want to go to video, use that video Hangouts feature, click a button, go to video Hangouts. But nobody uses that. It's not seamlessly integrated. This looks really seamlessly integrated. In fact, that it's in an app that's all very touchy and feely, is the kind of thing I think people might actually use.
And Mike, I think, just to bring it back to the beginning, what we were talking about with Facebook, the expansion of these Snapchat features kind of points to the growing importance of privacy in people's lives when it comes to social media. People are growing more conscious about, being able to control what it is that they share online. And if Facebook is a good example of the way that this trend is sort of moving forward. And you also hear reports that Twitter is getting into something called Whisper, which would be kind of a way to share content more privately with a select group or numbers of people. And so I think, what Snapchat is doing is really kind of capitalizing on that trend.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go full circle, Facebook tried to acquire Snapchat some time ago. I believe the offer was $3 billion, and Snapchat turned them down. $3 billion just wasn't enough, I guess. Well, in a sec, we're going to revisit the Amazon smartphone. Some really interesting news there. But first, I want to tell you about ZipRecruiter. If you're a hiring manager, if you own a small company, if you're in the position of hiring people, you know how important it is to hire the right people and not hire the wrong people. And the way that you hire the right people is you go to where they are. You have to go out across the whole internet because people don't congregate in one place looking for work. There are job sites all over the internet. So how do you do that? You use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter.com will enable you to post to 50+ job sites at once with a single click. Amazing. They also allow you to post your job on social networks like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Very powerful. Trouble is, if you're going to cast such a wide net, you're going to get lots of candidates. Only a minority of those candidates are likely to be the best or even qualified for that because you're casting such a wide net, and ZipRecruiter helps you with that as well. They automatically highlight the best candidates for you, so you can screen them, rate them, and then hire the right person fast. So try ZipRecruiter and find out why they've been used by over 100,000 businesses. Right now, Tech News Today listeners can try ZipRecruiter for a free 4-day trial by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. Well, Zach Epstein of the Boy Genius Report posted an exclusive look this morning at what he claims is Amazon's upcoming smartphone. The phone, if you recall, is unusual because it has 4 infrared cameras that support a 3D hologram-like interface. Obi-Wan, your only hope, that sort of thing. The image was created for internal use by Amazon designers, according to Epstein's sources, and it doesn't really look that different from your garden variety Android smartphone. it's even a little iPhone-ish if you look at it. It looks like a cross between an iPhone and an Android phone. It's black with a rounded bezel, single button on the front, rocker dials on the side, volume controls, and so on. The phone is supposed to launch by the end of September. Now, this is a really bold move, Brian Fung, for Amazon, because not only are they entering a market they've never been in before, they've never had a smartphone before, they're coming in with this crazy 3D feature. Do you think this is going to end up being a gimmick, or are they onto something that's going to be popular with the masses?
Well, I think anytime you introduce new technology that's so radically unlike anything we've seen before, you're bound to get critics and skeptics, and not having seen the device myself, I think we're going to have to sort of reserve judgment. But I think what we haven't really talked about when it comes to this phone yet is the fact that Amazon will reportedly be using its own mobile app store to distribute apps for this device, and I think that's really interesting. We haven't really seen Amazon get into this space, like you said, before in a big way, and this could be the moment when Amazon makes a big splash into app distribution.
Yeah, definitely. Beatmaster in the chat room said that all of Amazon lawyers assure you that there is no resemblance at all to the iPhone, none at all. They're currently in court with Samsung over copying and so on. Well, Google added a new feature to its Google Now service. I think, Jason, yesterday you encountered this.
I did.
But it'll essentially remember where you parked your car. Very cool. The feature uses your phone's sensors to detect whether you're in a moving vehicle or walking. When it notices that you're walking immediately after you're in a moving vehicle, it assumes that you parked your car. Of course, it can't tell if you're a driver or a passenger, or even a passenger on a bus or a taxi. It just knows that you were moving faster than a human can run, followed by pretty much walking around, and says, okay, that's where you left your car. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think this is a really cool feature.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't even know that there was a search update that rolled out. I just pulled up Google Now, so I didn't do anything to trigger it at all. It really did seem like magic. I knew that it was possibly coming to Google Now at some point, and then when it appeared, and it was pretty darn accurate. It wasn't accurate like right to the point, but it was close enough that if I were really lost, it would be easy for me to find my car. So I thought it was pretty impressive.
In other words, it was close enough that if somebody stole your phone and your keys,
oh boy,
they'd be able to get close enough to with a little button on your key. Yep. So it's great for car thieves. Google, you need to work on that, and because this is just very cool. But hey, this is the kind of thing that we talk about a lot, about whether people feel like their privacy is being invaded. Google's suddenly telling you where your car is. It's like, wow, that seems like kind of a privacy invasion, but I think it's going to be quickly overlooked, because it's like, hey, they know where my car is. Right. I mean, how many times have we gone back to the mall parking lot and been like, wait a minute?
Well, there are plenty of apps, that have been released that do this. The problem is you have to remember to pull out the app and say, this is where I parked my car. When it happens for you, it's magical.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brian Fung, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today again. It's always great to have you and your perspective on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people find your work?
I write for The Switch at The Washington Post, and you can follow me on Twitter at @B_Fung.
Wonderful. Well, you are a prolific journalist and writer, and I really appreciate all your work. And again, thanks for coming on Tech News today.
My pleasure.
Our guest tomorrow is the one and only Robert Scoble, who is possibly a recovering glasshole. You can tell us all about that. And so you want to tune in for that. And we want you to subscribe to Tech News Today. Video or audio, take your pick, or both. Go to twit.tv/TNT. And also join our Google Plus community and circle our page on Google Plus by searching for Tech News Today on Google Plus. They'll all come right up. And we want to hear from you. Comment on Twitter or Google Plus using the hashtag TechNewsToday. And send us an email at tnt@twit.tv, or leave us voicemail by calling 260-TNT-SHOW. Don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific. My name is Mike Elgin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.